AITA for letting my wife ruin our marriage over her best friend's fake affair claims. The proof was a detailed story about seeing me at Giovanni's Italian restaurant on March 15th, holding hands and kissing a brunette by the bar. I was in a conference room 50 miles away that night presenting quarterly reports to 12 coworkers who could confirm exactly where I was. The facts did not matter. Within hours of Vanessa's call, Rachel packed a suitcase, moved into her best friend's guest bedroom, and stopped answering my texts. By the next morning, she was already talking to a divorce attorney. 8 years of marriage began to unravel over screenshots she never showed me and accusations she never asked me to explain. While I was calling marriage counselors begging for a chance to prove my innocence, Vanessa was posting carefully worded updates about supporting friends through betrayal and knowing one's worth. She played the role of the protective best friend perfectly, comforting my wife in the aftermath of a lie she had meticulously built herself. 6 months later, the papers were signed, our house was sold, our finances were divided. Everything we had built together was reduced to legal documents and silent rooms. All because Rachel trusted her best friend's lie more than her husband. I thought the story ended there. Then, at 2 a.m, my phone rang. It was Courtney, one of our mutual friends, crying, apologizing, and asking if I was sitting down. She had screenshots that proved the affair never existed and that the person who destroyed my marriage had admitted to everything in writing. Rachel and I had what everyone called a perfect marriage. We had been together since our senior year of college, married for 8 years. We owned a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood and had a joint savings account set aside for the Europe trip we had been planning since our honeymoon. We hosted dinner parties where friends joked about us being relationship goals. We had routines, coffee together every Sunday morning, date nights twice a month, shared Netflix passwords, and inside jokes that made other couples roll their eyes. From the outside, we seemed unbreakable, but there was always Vanessa. She had been Rachel's college roommate, the maid of honor at our wedding, and the person my wife called first with every piece of news, good or bad. They texted constantly, shared everything, and had that kind of intense friendship that made me feel like a third wheel in my own marriage. Looking back, I can see the red flags I ignored. Vanessa had a habit of drawing attention to herself. She ruined Rachel's surprise birthday party by showing up and starting an argument. She convinced Rachel to cancel our anniversary dinner because she needed support through another relationship crisis. Any major decision we tried to make as a couple somehow went through Vanessa first. When I brought it up, Rachel got defensive. "You're just jealous," she used to say. "You do not understand female friendships." Vanessa has been there for me more than anyone. The dynamic shifted after Vanessa's divorce 6 months before everything fell apart. She started calling Rachel late at night, showing up unannounced, and making comments about how marriage changes people and traps women in lives they did not choose. Soon she started questioning everything about our relationship. Why did I work late sometimes? Why did not I text her constantly? Why was not I more romantic like the men in the movies? Rachel started repeating those same questions to me almost word for word. One night, after another interrupted dinner, I tried again. "Vanessa is going through a lot," I said. "But it feels like she is pulling you away from us." Rachel did not hesitate. "She is my best friend. She wants what is best for me, and I do not." That was not what I said, but it was exactly how I felt. By the time that story about Giovanni's came out, the trust between us had not just broken, it had already worn away, one conversation at a time. The call came on a Wednesday night, while I was reviewing reports at my desk. I could hear Rachel's phone buzzing in the kitchen, and then her voice getting higher with every passing minute. "Are you serious? At Giovanni's? When?" A pause. "A brunette. How tall was she? What was she wearing?" At first, I was not paying much attention. Later I would realize something else. Vanessa did not just tell Rachel a story. She told her a story that left no room for questions because she made sure Rachel felt stupid for even asking. But something in Rachel's tone made me pause. "So he was holding hands." Another pause. "Are you absolutely sure it was him?" That was when I realized they were talking about me. The call lasted another 10 minutes. Rachel paced around the kitchen asking for details, repeating them, writing things down. When she hung up, the house felt different. 20 minutes later, she was standing in the doorway of my office. Her face was pale, her phone in one hand, a notebook full of bullet points in the other. I need to ask you something, she said. And I need you to tell me the truth. Sure, I said. What is wrong? Where were you on March 15th? The night of the quarterly presentations. I opened my calendar. At the office. We had late meetings. I did not get home until almost 10. Vanessa saw you at Giovanni's that night. She said you were with another woman. I stared at her. That is impossible. I was nowhere near Giovanni's. She described the woman. Rachel continued. Brunette, my height, red dress. You were holding hands by the bar. Rachel, I was presenting to the finance department. 12 people can confirm where I was. She did not write that down. Instead, she closed the notebook. Vanessa would not lie about something like this, she said. She is my best friend. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and looked at me as if the conversation was already over. That was the moment I understood that something had broken and that I would not be given the chance to fix it. Rachel packed that same night. I stood in the bedroom doorway and watched her take clothes out of our shared closet, folding each item with the same careful precision she used for everything. She placed them in the suitcase we had bought for our honeymoon trip to Italy, the one we planned to use for the European vacation that never happened. She took her laptop, her favorite books, the jewelry box her grandmother had given her, and the framed photo of her and Vanessa from their college graduation. She paused briefly over the dresser, scanning the surface as if she were taking inventory. She did not pack like someone leaving in anger. She packed like someone cleaning up a mess. And that hurt more than yelling, because it meant she had already accepted a version of me that did not exist. She left behind the photo of our wedding day, the one where we were both laughing at something her dad said during the reception. Where are you going? I asked, even though I already knew. Vanessa's, she said without hesitation. She told me I could stay as long as I needed. Rachel, we can slow this down, I said. We can talk about this. She zipped up the suitcase. I trusted you, and you lied straight to my face. I did not lie. I was not at that restaurant. I have never even been to Giovanni's. She rolled the suitcase toward the door, moving with the efficiency of someone leaving for a business trip, not ending a marriage. I will come back for the rest of my things this weekend, she said, already grabbing the doorknob. The door closed behind her. 8 years of shared life turned into a house full of empty spaces. The second toothbrush stayed where it was. The coffee mug she always used remained untouched in the sink. The silence felt permanent. Within 24 hours, the story had spread. At first, I did not hear it directly. I noticed it in small ways. Texts that went unanswered. Calls that rang longer than usual. A group chat I had been in for years went silent overnight. By the next afternoon, it was obvious. At the grocery store, I ran into Lindsay, one of Rachel's co-workers. She saw me walking down the cereal aisle and immediately turned around. When I called her name, she stopped and looked at me as if I had committed some unspoken offense. I cannot believe it, she said. Rachel is one of the kindest people I know. I did not do anything, I said. There has been a mistake. She shook her head. Vanessa told us everything. That phrase followed me everywhere. Friends stopped inviting me to group events. Weekend plans disappeared. People I had known for years crossed the street when they saw me. Even casual acquaintances seemed to know exactly what kind of person they thought I was. Meanwhile, Vanessa was posting carefully worded updates about supporting friends through betrayal and standing by the people who matter most. Every post gathered comments full of sympathy and encouragement from people who never bothered to ask for my side of the story. 2 weeks after Rachel moved out, I called her. We need to talk, I said. This is getting out of hand. She agreed to meet me at Dr. Peterson's office, the marriage counselor we had seen once before during a rough patch 3 years ago. Back then, Dr. Peterson had helped us communicate better. I thought maybe he could help us find our way back to a rational conversation. Now, as Rachel walked into the office, I knew that hope was misplaced. She sat with her arms crossed, angled away from me. Her answers to Dr. Peterson's questions were short, concise, and carefully neutral. What would it take for you to consider working through this together? Dr. Peterson asked. An honest explanation, Rachel said, staring blankly at the wall behind my head, which he is not going to give. I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar for March 15th. I gave him the names and contact information of all the colleagues who could confirm where I had been. I offered credit card statements, phone records, anything that could prove I had not been anywhere near Giovanni's. She did not look at the screen. She did not ask a single follow-up question. She waited for the session to end. 3 weeks later, an envelope from Carter and Associates Family Law arrived in my mailbox. Rachel had filed for divorce. I spread the papers out on the kitchen table, the same table where we had eaten breakfast together for 8 years. Irreconcilable differences, division of assets, spousal support considerations, legal language that reduced our marriage to line items and timelines. My lawyer, Brian Matthews, explained the process calmly and precisely. She is asking for half the value of the house, half of the joint savings, and temporary spousal support while she gets settled, he said. It is standard in no-fault divorces. No fault, I repeated, even though I did not do anything wrong. The court does not determine who is at fault, he replied. Just how to divide what you built together. I signed the retainer agreement and watched 8 years of marriage turn into a case number. As the legal process moved forward, the social fallout deepened. In coffee shops, conversations stopped when I walked by. At the gym, people who used to spot me on the bench press avoided eye contact. In Target, whispers followed me down the aisles until someone realized I could hear them. The story had spread fast, and it had spread seamlessly, no uncertainty, no gaps, just one version of events that everyone seemed comfortable accepting. I started noticing the same phrase everywhere. Vanessa saw it. Vanessa would not lie. Vanessa has been so supportive. I ran into Kevin at the bank one afternoon. We were never close, but we knew each other well enough for small talk. Hey, he said, I heard about you and Rachel. It is tough. Did you hear why? I asked. He hesitated. The cheating thing. But honestly, this feels familiar to me. What do you mean? He lowered his voice. Vanessa did something similar years ago. Greg and Dana. She noticed problems. Things escalated, they split up. Then she was right there helping Dana get over it. That conversation stayed with me. Over the next week, similar comments popped up without me asking. Different names, different couples, same playbook. Vanessa always showed up at the beginning of the aftermath, never at the beginning of the relationship. I did not confront anyone. I did not correct the story. I no longer defended myself. I just listened. Around that time, Courtney started acting differently. She had always been one of the few people who still acknowledged me. But now, whenever we crossed paths, she seemed distracted, uncomfortable, in a way that did not match the hostility I was used to. At Paige's birthday party, she barely looked at me. When I tried to talk, she found excuses to move to the other side of the room. Are you okay? I asked her when we ended up near the drink table. Yeah, she said quickly. I am just tired. She left early without saying goodbye. 2 days later, I saw her sitting alone in the coffee shop near my office. She was staring blankly at her phone, her jaw clenched, her thumb hovering over the screen as if she was rereading something she did not want to see. When she noticed me, she locked her phone immediately and forced a smile. We exchanged a few neutral sentences, work, weather, nothing that mattered. But when she stood up to leave, she hesitated. Her hand lingered on the back of the chair longer than necessary. Take care, she said in a strained voice. I watched her walk out with her shoulders tense, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. That was when something clicked. The story that had destroyed my marriage was not done unfolding yet. And whatever Courtney was carrying was heavier than small talk, but not something she was ready to let go of. The call came at 2:17 in the morning on a Tuesday. I was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with legal documents spread out in front of me. Settlement calculations, asset division scenarios, numbers that were supposed to represent a life I no longer had. When my phone rang, I almost ignored it. Nobody called at that hour unless something had gone very wrong. Hello, it is Courtney. Her voice sounded thin and strained. Are you awake? Yes, I said. What is wrong? There was a pause on the line long enough for me to think the call had dropped. I need to tell you something, she finally said. About Rachel, about what really happened. That got my attention. What do you mean? Not over the phone, she said quickly. Can we meet somewhere? In a public place. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in our cars in the parking lot of an all-night diner right off the highway. The place glowed with fluorescent light, empty except for a truck idling near the pumps. We stayed inside our vehicles, windows rolled down slightly, engines running to fight off the cold. Courtney sat rigidly in the driver's seat, both hands wrapped around her phone as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. I should have said something sooner, she started. I know, but I was scared. Scared of what? Vanessa, she said without hesitation. She does not let people get in her way. Not without consequences. I did not respond. The story about Giovanni's, Courtney continued. It never happened. I looked at Courtney through the windshield. What? She made it all up. Vanessa made everything up. The restaurant, the woman, the date. I felt something tighten in my chest. Are you sure? She texted me about it the night before she called Rachel. She unlocked her phone, her hands shaking now, and held it out to me through the open window. I have screenshots. The first messages were dated March 14th. Vanessa, I am sick of seeing Rachel waste her life with someone who does not appreciate her. Vanessa, she deserves better than him. I scrolled down. Courtney, what are you talking about, Vanessa? Vanessa, you know exactly what I mean. A few messages later. Vanessa, Giovanni's tomorrow night. Vanessa, brunette, red dress, bar seating. Vanessa, details matter if you want it to be believable. My hands were shaking too now. She planned it, I said quietly. Keep reading, Courtney replied. The messages from the next day appeared. Courtney, did you really call Rachel? Vanessa, of course I did. She needed to know. Vanessa, this just speeds things up. I scrolled again. Courtney, but it is not true. Vanessa, it is true enough. If he were a better husband, she would not doubt him. I swallowed hard. Further down, weeks later. Vanessa, Rachel is better off without him. Vanessa, she is finally seeing clearly. Courtney, she is miserable. Vanessa, she will get over it. Vanessa, I did her a favor. The last screenshot was dated 3 days ago. Vanessa, I am actually proud of how this turned out. Vanessa, their marriage was not strong if she believed me over him. I handed the phone back to her slowly, as if it weighed more than it should. She destroyed everything. I said, it came out flat. I watched it happen. Courtney said, tears streaming down her face. You lost your wife, your friends, your reputation, and I did not say anything. Why now? Because I cannot live with this anymore, she said. She wiped her face. And because there is more. Other people saw these messages. Group chats, co-workers, Paige, Nicole, people Rachel trusts, and no one dared to say anything. Vanessa made it very clear what would happen if they did. Courtney said she keeps compromising information on people, or pretends to. Vanessa did not need real leverage to scare people. She just needed a reputation for ruining anyone who challenged her. She would accidentally leak private screenshots. She would plant doubts in the right ears. She would turn an awkward moment into a story that followed you for years. Everyone knew she did it. No one wanted to be next. I looked out at the empty parking lot. The diner sign flickered. Rachel chose to believe her, I said. Yes, Courtney replied softly. But she was guided there for months, years. We sat in silence after that. The truth was finally out in the open, but it had not fixed anything yet. It just sat there between us, heavy and irreversible, waiting to be used. I spent the next 3 days staring at those screenshots on my phone, trying to decide what to do with them. The evidence was undeniable. Vanessa had fabricated the entire story, admitted to manipulating Rachel, and expressed genuine pride in destroying our marriage. I had proof that could completely vindicate me, restore my reputation, and expose her for exactly what she was. But I also understood something else. Showing the screenshots to Rachel would not automatically repair what had been broken between us. Trust does not work like a light switch. You cannot just turn it back on after someone has spent months actively choosing to believe the worst about you. Rachel had not just fallen for Vanessa's lie. She had rejected calendars, witnesses, phone records, and even marriage counseling before considering that she might be wrong. The screenshots would prove I did not cheat. They would not prove our marriage was worth saving. Still, she deserved to know the truth about the person she trusted our life together with. On Friday morning, I called Brian Matthews and explained what Courtney had given me. Text messages showing premeditation changed the context entirely, he said. Especially if your wife filed the lawsuit based on false information. What do you recommend? Document everything. Send me copies for our records. Then decide if you want to address this privately first or let it enter the legal process. I did not hesitate. This is not about leverage, I said. It is about clarity. That same weekend, I started hearing about changes in Rachel's behavior. Paige was the first to mention it when I ran into her near my office coffee shop. Rachel has been asking questions, she said quietly. About Giovanni's, about when Vanessa first mentioned seeing you there. That is new. What did you tell her? The truth, that Vanessa only brought it up after the fact. Paige paused. Rachel just got really quiet. Over the next few days, I heard similar things. Rachel asking people about timelines, about who had been where, about details she had never questioned before. Nicole called me on Tuesday morning. She asked me if I did not think it was weird that Vanessa knew exactly what you were supposed to be wearing, she said. Details she could not possibly have seen from across a crowded restaurant. Rachel was making the right inquiries, the ones she had refused to make when they mattered most. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Rachel, can we talk? Just the two of us. There is something I need to ask you about that night. I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Me, tomorrow. Public place. I am not debating what happened. A pause. Rachel, Lakeside Park, 3 p.m. by the pavilion. I will be there. I put my phone face down on the table. Whatever happened next would not be about fixing the past. It would be about whether the truth mattered now, after everything else had already been lost. I arrived at Lakeside Park 10 minutes early and chose a bench near the pavilion where other people were visible, but not close enough to overhear. Families with kids on the playground. Runners following the paved path that wound around the pond. Dog walkers stopping to chat near the water fountain. Normal life continuing around the conversation that was about to unfold. Rachel arrived at exactly 3, wearing the same navy blue wool coat she had since college and carrying herself like someone walking into a job interview she desperately did not want to attend. She sat on the opposite end of the bench, leaving a deliberate gap between us that felt like its own form of communication. A few yards away, Courtney was standing near the path by the trees, pretending to look at her phone, close enough to see us, far enough away not to interfere. Thank you for coming, Rachel said quietly. I nodded, but offered nothing in return. She took a deep breath. I have been thinking about some things regarding that night at Giovanni's, about the story Vanessa told me. Oh, what about it? The details, she said, speaking slower now. Some of them do not make sense when I really think about it. I waited, letting her work through whatever process had brought her here. She said she saw you holding hands at the bar with this woman, Rachel continued. But yesterday I called Giovanni's. They do not have bar seating. They never have. It is all tables and booths. My expression did not change. I was not going to help her through this realization. She told me the woman was wearing a red dress, Rachel went on, describing her height, her hair, even her jewelry. But she also said the restaurant was dimly lit, too dark to see clearly from where she was sitting across the room. Rachel paused, looking out toward the pond. And the strangest thing, she added, her voice cracking, is that I checked my own photos from that night. I did not understand what she meant until she continued. I took a picture of our living room at 8:41 p.m., she whispered. The dog was on the couch. Your laptop was open on the coffee table, and I can see the corner of your suit jacket hanging on the chair because you forgot to put it away. Her hands tightened in her lap. You were here, she said. Not at Giovanni's. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot Courtney had forwarded to me. Do you want to know what really happened that night? I asked, holding the screen out to her. Rachel looked at the phone in my hand, as if it might contain something dangerous. She read the first message, then the second. Her face grew paler and paler as she scrolled through the entire conversation thread, watching Vanessa plan and execute the lie in documented detail. March 14th, Rachel whispered, reading the timestamp. She texted me about this the night before she called me. Keep reading. Rachel's hands were shaking visibly now as she continued through the messages, the ones about justifying the manipulation, about doing Rachel a favor by ending her marriage, about being genuinely proud of the plan's success. She destroyed our marriage on purpose, Rachel said, her voice breaking on the last word. Yes, not because she thought you were actually cheating, but because she decided I would be better off without you. That is what the screenshots say. Rachel stared at the phone for another long moment, then handed it back to me. Tears were streaming down her face. Now I chose to believe her, she said. Over you. Over 8 years of marriage. Over everything we built together. You really did. I did not even look at your proof. I did not listen to your explanations. I refused to consider that you might be telling the truth. No, you did not. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her coat. Can you forgive me? I had spent months thinking about this exact question. Yes, I said. I can forgive you for being manipulated. Relief flooded her face. but I can never trust you again." The relief vanished immediately. "What do you mean?" "I mean that forgiveness and reconciliation are two completely different things," I said. "You did not just accidentally believe a lie about me. You actively chose it. But now we know the truth. Now we know you were manipulated." I interrupted her. "We also know that when it mattered, you did not trust me enough to ask the hard questions." Rachel cried harder. "Now, what if we go back to therapy? What if I cut Vanessa off completely?" "Some choices do not come with a reset button," I said, standing up from the bench. "Please," she said, "do not give up on us." I looked at her and felt something I did not expect. "Peace. I hope you learn to trust your own judgment," I said. "And I hope you never give someone else the power to make decisions like this for you ever again." I turned toward the parking lot. She called my name. I did not turn around. As I walked away, the sounds of the park filled the silence. Children laughing, the splash of a dog jumping into the pond, the low hum of ordinary life going on without us. For the first time since the night she packed her bags, I realized I was not leaving with anger or loss. I was leaving with clarity. This was not revenge. It was simply the moment I stopped waiting for someone who had already shown me who they were. Courtney sent me updates over the following weeks. The screenshots had made their way through our social circle faster than I expected. Once people realized what Vanessa had done, not just to me, but potentially to them, the backlash was swift and decisive. Paige was the first to cut off contact completely. Then Nicole, and then most of Rachel's co-workers who had supported her in the betrayal narrative. The group chats that had once united around Rachel's betrayal narrative went silent when it came to defending Vanessa's manipulation tactics. "She has been calling everyone trying to explain," Courtney told me during one of our coffee meetups, claiming the screenshots were taken out of context, that she was just protecting Rachel from a bad marriage. Does anyone believe her? No. Too many people remember her doing similar things before. The pattern is too clear now. Vanessa had learned what happens when your reputation is built on other people's secrets and your influence relies on manufactured drama. When the foundation crumbles, it all comes down at once. Meanwhile, Rachel had started what could only be described as a campaign to win me back. The calling started 3 days after our conversation in the park. Then came the text messages, long and detailed apologies explaining how sorry she was, how wrong she had been, how much she wanted to fix things between us. She sent flowers to my office with a note about second chances. She showed up at the coffee shop where I ate breakfast every Saturday morning, hoping for another conversation. She even contacted Brian Matthews asking if there was any way to stop the divorce proceedings. I ignored the calls, deleted the messages unread, threw away the flowers, and asked the coffee shop staff to let me know if she was there before I walked in. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday morning in December. Rachel challenged the proceedings. The house was sold the following month. The money was split exactly according to the original agreement. By January, I had moved into a smaller place across town, a one-bedroom apartment with good light and no shared memories. I kept in touch with Courtney and a few others who had been willing to stand up for the truth when it mattered. I avoided social events where I might run into Rachel or anyone who was still loyal to her version of events. I started dating again in the spring, cautiously, slowly, with the kind of care that comes from learning hard lessons about trust and judgment. The woman I am dating now is someone who asks direct questions when something does not make sense, who verifies sources before believing stories, who understands that loyalty means supporting someone's growth, not facilitating their worst decisions. Rachel learned to trust the wrong person at the absolute worst time. I learned something different. I learned that walking away from someone who does not trust you is not a failure. It is self-respect. And once I understood that, everything finally made sense. I did not lose my wife to Vanessa's lie. I lost her the moment Rachel decided my word was not worth protecting. Comment. This story really stayed with me, and I hope it gave you something meaningful to reflect on as well. I've come to realize how important it is to protect your self-respect in every relationship. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself, and taking responsibility for the choices we make helps us heal and move forward with clarity. Sometimes, choosing your inner peace is the strongest decision you'll ever make. Learning to trust your own judgment takes practice, but it changes everything. True kindness supports without manipulating or controlling others. Healing takes time and space, and you are worth that investment. You deserve relationships built on real trust and genuine respect. Keep choosing yourself gently but firmly every single day. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.